Good evening. Welcome to the gathering live, Facebook Live Home Edition, coming to you from my dining room table. I hope you guys have had a really great day. I am really tired, but excited to be here with you and to share tonight's sermon and a quick announcement. All right, before the sermon and other announcements, I do want to remind you guys that our Wednesday night study is continuing, that Curtis is leading, called Enough at the Church. Our Thursday night webinar will be continuing this week. There's a lot going on. Messy Church is Friday. Next Sunday is a one service Sunday because it's the fifth Sunday of the month, so we will not have a 9 o'clock service, just a 10:15 service. So make sure you join us. It would be great to see you in person. All right, today's scripture comes from Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verses 10 to 14, in the Message version, which says this. I found the recipe... beginning with verse 10, it says, I'm glad in God, far happier than you would ever guess. Happy that you're again showing such strong concern for me. Not that you ever quit praying and thinking about me, you just had no chance to show it. Actually, I don't have a sense of needing anything personally. I've learned by now to be quite content whatever my circumstances. I'm just as happy with little as with much as with little. I found the recipe for being happy whether full or hungry, hands full or hands empty. Whatever I have, wherever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. I don't mean that your help didn't mean a lot to me. It did. It was a beautiful thing that you came alongside me in my troubles. All right, we're doing a sermon series about knowing when we have enough, knowing when we are enough, learning the art of contentment. And I don't think there's anyone else in the New Testament whose life depicts that more beautifully and profoundly than that of the Apostle Paul. You know, Apostle Paul, as we read throughout the New Testament, was born into a privileged family, right? He had the right connections. He had the right education, the best of educations, in the best of Jewish schools. He was a Roman citizen, which was something really hard a privilege that was hard for people to get. So it showed that he was prominent, that he was important. And yet Paul, he was so fiercely devoted to his teachings, to his belief in God, that we read in the first chapter of Acts that he's one of the folks that are persecuting the Christians, right? He's holding the coats of those who are stoning the Christian Stephen to death because he wanted to persecute anyone that was getting in the way of who God was and in the way of God's truth. And then Paul's life forever changed on the road to Damascus as this bright light just knocked him to the ground and he was blinded. And he heard this voice say, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And Saul said, who is it I'm persecuting? And the response was, it's Jesus. And everything changed for Paul in that moment. He got up, he was still blind for a few more days until Ananias, another Christian, laid hands on him, prayed for him, and then he was not just able to see physically again, but spiritually as well. And for him, it didn't matter what privilege, what power he had. His goal in life was to tell the world about the love and the grace and the power of Jesus Christ. Everything changed, right? And life was not easy. He had to learn the art of contentment. He traveled about 10,000 miles, they're estimating, between his 3 missionary journeys and then his final trip to Rome, where he was imprisoned and killed for his faith in Jesus Christ. We read a little bit about his hardships in 2 Corinthians 11:25-27, which says, 3 times I was shipwrecked. I passed a night and a day on the deep, on frequent journeys, in dangers from rivers, dangers from robbers, dangers from my own race, dangers from Gentiles, dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness, dangers at sea, in toil and hardship through many sleepless nights, through hunger and thirst, through frequent fastings, through cold and exposure. Life was not easy for Paul. He went from privilege and power to shipwrecks and snake bites. And yet, when all was said and done, he gets this letter as he's in jail. It's probably around 62 AD, just a few years before his death. He gets a letter and a message and some money from the church in Philippi. And it totally warmed his heart, guys. And at the beginning of this passage, Paul describes it as being like that very first bloom that comes up through the winter frost, a sign of spring. And Paul says, it gives me great joy and great hope because it had been about 10 years since Paul had planted the church in Philippi. And communication wasn't easy back then. He had no way for certain, of knowing whether or not the church was still alive, if it was vibrant, if they were still following the teachings of Jesus. And so to get this gift of money to help with his legal fees, which was much appreciated, but more importantly, word that although life was tough for the church in Philippi, they hadn't lost their joy. They'd stayed the course. They are still running that race of faith. It just brought hope to Paul's heart. And so he shares with them the secret of contentment. And he says, I found the recipe for being happy, whether full or hungry, hands full or hands empty. Whatever I have, wherever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. Or as other translations say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And his definition and description of being content in all things, of what contentment is, was like totally radical in that day and age, because you look at other philosophers like Seneca, and they said, listen, what contentment is, the only way to get there and to be content is to be self-sufficient. It's all about you looking out for yourself, you putting yourself first, you taking care of yourself. So if you have a lot, if you have a little, you only have yourself to blame because you are the master and commander of your fate, right? And Paul is saying, are you kidding me? Like, how many of us have thought that the answer to being happy in life is to do it all ourselves, to put up these walls between us and others, us and God, and just take care of ourselves? That has not brought the contentment and the peace and the joy that we so desperately want and need. And Paul says, no joke. Because the secret to contentment is knowing that we are not self-sufficient, that everything depends on the one who has created us, who has formed and shaped us and called us out of the safety of our world to make a difference in the lives of others. That's what contentment is all about. And I had kind of an Apostle Paul stay with me this week, and I want to share her story briefly. Our church randomly got an email saying, hey, there's some kids from the Matsiko World Orphan Children's Choir coming into town, and we could really use a place to stay. Can anyone house them? And I love the gathering. The DNA of this church is so beautiful and so deep, because there are like 6 families from the church who opened up their homes. We weren't hosting a concert. We're in the middle of renovations. We don't even have heat on Sunday sometimes because of the power surges. But we opened up our homes and said, come and stay with us, share your culture, and be loved. And so my husband and I hosted 6 girls from India. So there were only 6, but they represented 4 countries: Liberia, Nepal, India, and Peru. And the chaperone, at first it was kind of hard to see which one was the chaperone. They all looked about the same age. You can go to my Facebook page to see more videos and pictures of these remarkable young women. But Mama Ta was our chaperone, and she was 19 years old, and she had left Nepal for the first time just last year when she was 18. So she comes from this really small village where there aren't even roads, so there's no way to get to a school. She has to travel to the next mountain over to try to attend classes, and so she was trying to learn, trying to study, and this Matsiko group came in with all these extracurricular activities and sports and music. She quickly became a leader in it, and so when the organizer of this nonprofit reached out to her and said, listen, could you be a chaperone? We want kids from Nepal to be in our choir, to tour the U.S. for a year and share your story. She said, okay. Well, she didn't speak a lot of English, had never been to an airport, had never been on an airplane, had not seen a lot of Western-style toilets, had not seen even Kathmandu, the capital city that she would fly out of. But Mama Ta was courageous, and she said, I'm going to learn to be content. I'm got to take my chance here. And so she led 7 kids, and they got on a plane in Nepal, and they were supposed to fly from Nepal to China, and then China to Seattle, which is where the choir is based. And they made it safely to China, but after that, the flight to Seattle was canceled, and she didn't know what to do. She didn't have any money. She didn't know where she was going, and they said, well, we can't get you to Seattle, but we can get you to Los Angeles. And she said, is Los Angeles in America? Like, she had no idea, guys, and she has 7 young kids depending on her to get her safely and them safely to Seattle. So she hops on this 14-hour flight to Los Angeles, and just as she did from Nepal to China, anytime the stewards or stewardesses came by to offer them food or snacks, she said, oh, no, we can't have anything to eat or drink, because she thought it all cost money, and she had no money to pay for it. So these kids are hungry. These kids are thirsty. They land in Los Angeles. She has no cell phone. She has no money. She has no way to reach out to the choir and say, we're here. We just got delayed. She has the guy's number like written on her arm, so she's walking around the airport trying to find someone to help her call this guy and make arrangements to just get home, to get somewhere where she can be fed. And she said in that moment, she comes from a country where people are Hindu, where they are Buddhist, where Christianity is not a popular religion, but she learned enough about Jesus through her Matsiko lessons that she said, Rachel, in that moment I cried out to God, and I was tired and I was scared. And I said, God, if you can get me through this, if you can be enough for me and protect me and these children, then this is my moment of faith in you. You are my only hope. And everything worked out. Don, who runs the choir, was excited to hear from her that they were safely in Los Angeles. They made arrangements. And she said when Don pulled that van up and loaded the kids inside and took them home to eat, they just ate and ate and ate, and then realized later, wow, this is what American food tastes like. They didn't even stop to think because they were just so hungry. And she said, you know what, Rachel, whether I have a lot or whether I have nothing at all for more than a day as I'm traveling with these kids, I've learned to be content. Because in Christ, I found my meaning, I found my hope, I found my peace when nothing else made sense in my life. And I just wonder, do we live lives like this? Like, these girls were remarkable, full of joy, total servants. And they had just like one bag of clothes. That's all they owned. And yet for them, it was an abundant life. And they were honored and blessed to be a part of this journey and to share their story with others. And I look around my home, I look around my life, and I say, you know, am I finding my identity, my call, my future in my connection to Jesus Christ, and knowing that, you know, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So today I handed out keychain, like little key fob tab things to anyone who came to church with a prayer on it that Adam Hamilton has as part of his Enough sermon series. And I just think it's a beautiful prayer. So if you didn't get one of the little key tag things, then just jot this prayer down. Put it on your phone in your notes section, and then here's the deal. Anytime you're going into any type of place that wants your money, so Target or Home Depot, IKEA when it opens up, grocery stores, pray this prayer and may it guide you closer to contentment than consumerism. The prayer is this: Lord, help me to be grateful for what I have, to remember that I don't need most of what I want, and that joy is found in simplicity and generosity. So I don't know if you are content yet or not, if you are clinging to Christ or not, but it's never too late to reach out, to pray, to ask for help and guidance. And by admitting that we can't be self-sufficient anymore, may you find all that you have ever truly wanted or need. Thanks be to God. Amen. All right, guys, before I go, I do want to share an announcement that the DS was at church this morning. We wanted to let you guys as our church family know first before I make it Facebook official with any other like posts or anything in writing on social media. And that is that I said at the 10:15 service, I love both of my children equally. They're both amazing and remarkable. But I tell my son that because he was born first, he was the first one to make me a parent. I mean, I was not a mother until I had a child. And so I want to tell you guys the same thing, even though it's kind of virtual here. But you made me a pastor. It wasn't until the gathering that I knew what it was to lead a church, to love a church, to have this crazy journey of trailers being stolen and renovating warehouses and then renovating churches and then renovating sanctuaries and merging and growing and baptizing people. It has just been the greatest honor and blessing of my entire life. And so there have been times where people have called and said, hey, you want to go plant a church here? Will you join us and lead a church here in this state or area? And I've said, no, like there's nothing like the gathering. I can't replicate this. You guys are so unique, and you're my family. But I did get a call around December. Again, I'm not looking for any of this. And I was asked to consider a position working for one of the general boards of the Methodist Church. So we have churches and we have districts, we have conferences, and then what helps all these annual conferences communicate nationally and internationally are these general boards that train and equip and communicate on behalf of the denomination. So anyways, they said, would you consider applying for this position? And I said, oh, I'm not going to do that. I love the gathering. And they said, please just apply and see what happens. And so about 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, when I was actually out of town doing a conference, I got a call that the General Board of Discipleship has asked me to come on staff there beginning in July in Nashville, Tennessee, to be the director of recruiting, assessing, and training all church planters for the United Methodist Church. And it was a really huge and hard decision for Brandon and I to make. We prayed a lot about it. We talked a lot about it. And And we realize that with a lot of the uncertainty going on in Methodism right now, with another general conference coming up, that if I can do anything to help us find a way forward, to help us communicate and learn to love each other through our differences, if I can help train and inspire and educate church planters and church plants as to how to reach people with the love, the unconditional love of a God who sees all of us and sent his son to die for all of us, then that was an opportunity that I was being called to take. And it wasn't just about me. There was a big family factor here because, Brandon just lost his dad, and we have his memorial service in Ohio this weekend. And grief is hard, and it's hard to lead a church when you're missing your own father and just have a lot on your plate. So this move will allow Brandon to go kind of part-time. He's applied and asked to go on a sabbatical so that he can learn and heal and grieve and be there for our kids. I'll also, this is totally crazy, but I'm, when I get home at night, I'm home, I don't have meetings. I don't have to live and die by my phone 24/7 because I love all of you. And if any crisis happens, I want to be right there. Well, I'm gonna have nights and weekends to just invest and pour into my young children. And our family is gonna get to do something that I don't think clergy couples ever get to do, and that's all sit together in the pew on a Sunday and worship as a family. I don't know what that will be like, where we will worship, but that's another opportunity that we want to be able to experience with our children while they're still young enough to want us around and to go to church together. So my last Sunday will be in June. At some point, Staff Parish is meeting with the DS on Wednesday to start talking about who will be coming in, their hopes, dreams, characteristics of a pastor that whoever this pastor is going to just totally surpass me. I promise you, you're going to be in good hands. You will love this person, and they will love this church because there is nothing like it in the entire world. So I love you guys, and I will miss all of you terribly. But with God, all things are possible, right? And we are going to be content in all circumstances. So I'm just so grateful that when you guys heard the news today, you didn't throw things at me or yell and slam doors. The outpouring of support and love and understanding has been totally unexpected, but profoundly appreciated by me and my family. So we still have 3 months left, guys. That means I want to see all of you in worship every Sunday so I can give you hugs and we can laugh and cry and vision about the future together. You're all such a blessing, and I am here for you every step of the way in this transition process. So keep the cabinet in your prayers as they're looking not just locally, but but nationally as well for someone that might be a good fit. We just want God's will to be done here. So, so Kimberly, you guys all have to come and be here. We're gonna have a big party, I'm sure. I'm just waiting. People are already texting, and we're making plans to get together and just celebrate what God has done at the gathering at Scott Memorial. So I'm gonna stop talking. I could talk to you guys all night and read all these comments and just cry in front of you, but that is not the way I want to spend my Sunday evening. So just know that you are loved deeply by God, by your church family, and by your pastor. Have a great night, guys. See you next week.